Hi everybody, it's April. Thanks for stopping back by my channel. I'm going to share the rest of the cards I created using the My Monthly Hero card kit. We're going to get started with this card using the background Starry Night background by Hero Arts. I made sure my Tim Holtz platform was on the side showing rubber was facing up to use this rubber stamp. I'm going to go in with some Tombow markers and just scribble a variety of shades on this rubber stamp and add way too much water. So of course nothing came out. So a little lesson there for you. Don't use too much water. Even on, I'm showing you this because I'm going to use this background panel that I created using just cleaning up the ink. But so even on my second attempt here, I added too much water. So if you try to recreate something like this using your watercolor markers, only do a very light misting of water. That would be my best advice. Now, I did also use acrylic ink on this stamp, and that was a disaster as well. It wasn't too bad, but you really couldn't see the stars in that one. I cut it out of the video because I didn't use the panel, but that's really the only experiment I did with the stamp so far. I haven't just used basic ink. So take it for what it is. But again, there, when you see those real large water droplets, that's too much water. So I thought I would try this time, instead of stamping it on the platform, that I would just hold the paper down, use a copy paper, and rub my hands over it. And I got a much better impression that way. So we're going to take this panel here, and I'm going to take some, I can't remember the name of this brand, but these are very old spray inks I had in my stash, Tattered Angels or something like that. I'll put everything in the description box below. So I took a blue shimmer mist, sprayed and dried it, and then I'm going to take this kind of a pearl color and do the same thing, spray and dry. And it really blended all of the inks together and gave a nice velvety shimmer look to the panel. I cut out a frame using some Averyl dies. I also took a Lawn Fawn die and cut this Hillside border. I'm going to trim that off. And then I just used some purple cardstock in my stash for the card base. Card base measures 5.5 by 4.25. So I have some of these images. Now I wanted to mention why I didn't color them is because I'm going to be sending this to my granddaughter to color. So for Christmas, I bought her a huge art desk that she can do all of her coloring in her room. And so I'm going to send her some gel pens, the Stardust pen, and some colored pencils. Some proper colored pencils to, I shouldn't say proper, but I'm going to send her an extra selection of colored pencils so she could color this herself. So I just used some multimedia matte glue to get these adhered because it is a very wet, it was a wet background. So I find the multimedia matte helps to adhere these images a little bit better. And then I'll add this little kind of a snowbank. And again, if she wants to go in and color this in whatever color she wants, she could do that. And then just use some glue and 3M foam tape to adhere these images onto the panel. So if you were recreating this, you could actually turn this into a shaker because of the frame. But I didn't because I wanted her to be able to color the images. But so let's say you colored all of these in, then you could just make a really pretty shaker and add some sequins in the starry night sky. So we'll finish getting this adhere. I trimmed that off just a little bit so it would fit back behind that little snowbank in the front. And you'll see what I'm talking about here. So yeah, I can tuck it in between. This Lawn Fawn die is very versatile. I love using it for all kinds of things. And it was a landscape frame. I just cut the frame off and only used the snowbank portion or the landscape portion. So I'll get her adhered with some glue as well. I'm going to add my frame and adhere it to my card base. Oh, right there, I am taking a pencil and making a very light marking of where that ground stops, so I can put the 3M foam tape above that line, and then the rest is going to be glue, just because of different layers of dimension there. So I wanted to mention that there's a few how not to's in this video. I apologize, but I think that's the whole point of crafting, is to learn from your mistakes. And I definitely learned a lot doing these 3 cards that I'm going to show in this video. So first thing is, obviously using watercolor markers or any kind of watercoloring on a rubber stamp. You really only need a very light misting. Second lesson I probably learned was to actually use your Misti or your stamping positioner tool when your gut tells you you should, because otherwise you're going to regret it and your sentiment is not going to stamp all the way. Now, it worked fine on this one because I'm using my Misti, but in the last card you'll see that the sentiment was not stamped well, and I really had a hard time fixing the problem. Anyhow, and then also, just trying to go in and make the most of your mistakes is something also I learned, not to give up so easily on these cards. So I'm just taking my Tombow eraser and erasing those pencil lines and a couple other little marks that were on there. I'm taking my Stardust pen that came in the kit and just going around adding some dot detail. I know it's not showing up on camera, but it is a really sparkly, starry night when you're holding it up close. I'll do the same thing with my white gel pen here in just a moment, and I'm also going to go and kind of clean up the moon. So I took some of the sequins in the kit, added those, and I added some of these gems from Studio Cadia and added those in the center of my sequins. Here's the white gel pen I was telling you about. And that's pretty much going to complete this card. Again, I'm going to send the Stardust, because I have 2 pens, I'm going to send that Stardust pen and some other gel pens and colored pencils to my granddaughter along with this card. And here are a couple of still images. Okay, so here was that panel I showed you that we used to clean up the mess I made on the first attempt of using that rubber stamp. And I'm just going to make a shaker out of this. And with this card, I have no idea where I saw a little dandelion that had a face, but that was my inspiration to make a card for my grandson. Now, I can't send one grandchild a card without sending the other one a card. So I thought this would just be a cute little card for a boy, and or even my granddaughter would have liked it. But so I'm going to turn it into a shaker, and I'm going to adhere this back panel, just making some lines. This is kind of doing it the hard way, but it is what it is. So I'm going to make this into a little dandelion with a face. So first I stamped the sentiment, again using the Misti, which worked out great, especially on these watercolor panels. You definitely want to use a positioner tool so you could do repeat stamping. So now I'm going to take the dandelion and one of the leaves, and I'm going to add, I tried at first to use this little tiny, I just took like a hole puncher and my masking paper and made a tiny little mask. So I put that over the center of the flower, and then before I actually stamp it, I'm going to remove that little mask. And unfortunately, this little circle was too small. Now, I took some stamps that I just dug through my Lawn Fawn stamps to find a little stamp with a smiley face. And I attempted to do that, but it doesn't really turn out. So I just grabbed a little, these are kind of one of those circles you can cut out. It's the smallest circle I had in my stash, and I'm going to stamp the smile on top of that little tiny circle. So there's one there from Lawn Fawn I was showing you. Again, I'll link everything down below. But and if you had a bigger circle, you could use this one from Lawn Fawn as well. It just depends on how big you wanted his little face to be. I wanted more of the dandelion actual flower to show behind him, like hair. So that's why I used the smaller little circle. So really not much to this. I went ahead and colored these images off camera with, again, my watercolor markers. And it's kind of funny because the leaves, when I initially, I stamped 2 leaves. I had 2 leaves, cut out. When I went to go do it, it really looked like the leaf was flicking you off. And so I had to trim one of the leaves. It still, to me, honestly looks like this flower is flicking someone off. But I kind of cut it, and then I took my white gel pen to kind of go back and add a little white border. But see there, I don't know. Maybe I have a bad mind. I don't know. I apologize. But I got that done, and I'm just going to kind of piece this all together. I'm using my white gel pen just to clean up some lines there as well. And then I'll add some sparkle all over this little guy. Again, it is using my Tombow markers to color it in. I'm going to take the gel pen and kind of make those highlights again, I like to do. And get these all glue adhered. And then I'm going to glue adhere it to the acetate on the front of the card. I don't know. You have to tell me what you think. Maybe, again, I don't know why I thought that's what it looks like this flower is doing, but my grandson won't know any different. Oh, and also on the shaker portion, it doesn't shake too much, so I would probably go back and do 2 layers of foam if I were to redo this card. So I'm just using that multi-matte medium there because it is going to adhere to acetate. I want a strong glue. And then I use glue dots on the leaves and on the top of the head. Just that really kind of lifted plastic or whatever you want to call it of the glue dots helps give a little lift on the hand that's waving and the head. So here's the tonic shimmer pen. And I'm just going to be careful because, you know, this is a watercolor based ink that I used, but I'm going to go and add sparkle all over this little guy. So just a little fun card. I thought it was different. And again, I have no idea where I got the dandelion with the face stuck in my head, but I like it. I think it's cute. And on the last card, so here's a lesson learned. Now, doing the first card without coloring the images, I kind of actually liked it regardless of the reason behind it. So I didn't want to waste all of these images that I had, you know, cut out from, if you saw part 2 in my video of the 10 cards, 1 kit, I had a whole bunch of these stamped out. And these were some leftovers, and I didn't want them to go to waste. I didn't want to color them in either because I kind of really liked the look of not coloring them in. I took a stencil, some vintage photo distress ink, and just made a very light background on the left-hand corner of this card. And I really, really like this look. So I'll glue adhere all of these images to that base on the lower left. And here's where the sentiment did not stamp. So you can barely read some of the larger font. The big and small word there is really light. So I tried to correct it the best I could. But if you were going to recreate this layout, definitely use, you know, a multi-stamping tool so you can get a very good impression. It could have been the ink I was using as well. Maybe my ink pad was a little dry, but either way, I was not happy with the way that this card turned out. I liked the layout, but it just was definitely a fail, in my opinion. So you'll see I'm going to try to correct the font. That wasn't really successful. And then when I went and added the sequins, I wanted to add some little brown drops into the center of the sequins. And I used some Ranger brown drops because I think that's the only brown I have. Now, the Ranger drops are very, very fluid, and it actually filled up the entire sequence. So my bad. I should have probably just went back in with, I should have just left it as sequins, to be honest. But I wanted to add a little bit more color into the middle of the sequins. And so maybe if I had a light tan color and maybe some Nuvo drops, those are a little bit thicker in consistency. So anyway, that is what it is. Now, of course, I couldn't adhere all of this. I didn't want to wait for it to dry. So you'll see me show it on the card base. I did use the history color cardstock that came in the kit for my card base. And that's it for this card. That's it for my 10 cards, 1 kit videos. If you haven't seen part 1 and 2, I'll link them in the description box below. And thank you so much for your patience with me. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found a little bit of inspiration despite all of my errors. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day. Bye.